In the Mongol Empire, violations of the Yasa are considered especially heinous. The great judge from Al-Malik that investigates these vicious violations is a Chinggisid heir named Chagatai. This is his story. Hello, I'm Samurai J. Morgenstern, otherwise known as Yano Challenge, and welcome to the Mongols podcast. I'm here with my wonderful friend, Madison.
Howdy do.
Howdy do, alright. I just called her in for a co-host because I desperately need one. And we're here for episode 13 of the Mongols podcast, known as Chagataw and Order.
You know, he was gonna get Felicia Day, but she was just so busy. She just couldn't get in.
Yeah, something like that.
It just did not work out. She was busy, he was busy, so he got me instead.
Yep. Alright, so we are today looking at one of the many empires that the Mongol Empire split off into, specifically the one founded by his second son, by the name of Chagatai.
Ooh.
And so we are going to start off somewhere very ambiguously in the 1200s because we don't have too many records of Genghis Khan's life before he became a great Khan of the Mongols, or at least nothing too consistent. Looking at you, Secret History.
Now, I do want the audience to know that if you didn't tell them this on last week's episode, I know none of this.
It's alright.
Absolutely none of this. My knowledge of the Mongols, the Mongolians, however you want to call them, I'm not sure what the right term is anymore, is a little poem I saw in a comic about that's done to the same tune as the woodchuck and the chucking wood, so I have no idea what happened.
So Genghis Khan basically...
But you don't need to go into that because the audience already knows. So let's get.
Yeah. So anyways, but the first time that we actually see Chagatai officially plop into the history books is about 1206. Coincidentally, when his father Genghis managed to break through the proverbial obstacle course that is all of Mongolia's political sphere and made a Khan. And in reward for being a good little boy and Genghis's dad, he gets 4,000 troops and the Altai Mountains, which is in about the west of Mongolia, is somewhere around the southwest, I think. And much like his brothers, he gets to lead troops on campaigns, and his first spotlight is like when he's working with his brothers. Jochi and Ogadei against the Jin dynasty. He's generally known as reasonably competent, although the big command problem came when he and his brother Jochi took over the city of Urgench over in I believe somewhere around modern day Iran or modern day Iran or one of the Stan countries. I'm not fully sure. I'm terrible at geography as usual.
Hey man, I'm not much better at it.
Fair enough. This is America.
You know, as they say, I could not find my butt with 2 hands and a flashlight.
Oh dear. So, anyway, the big dispute between Jochi and Chagatai is basically what exactly we're going to do with this city now that we've captured it. And Chagatai is, we're going to burn this place to the ground. And Jochi is like, how about we set it up as a trading port and don't do that? Because it's already a trading port, we can tax the heck out of it.
So I guess you could say the guy was a bit of a port authority?
Indeed. Yes, he was.
I'm sorry, that's a terrible one. I'm sorry. I was 1,000 years jail. That was awful.
Don't worry. It hasn't earned the famous "God damn it, Barb" gif. All right, so anyways, back to actual history. So Chinggis is obviously really pissed that his two kids are fighting over stuff because this is like, dude, we could be crushing so many poor people if you guys could stop arguing with each other. Seriously. And he decides,
yes, I will turn this I will turn this dynasty around. God dang it. Just, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, but you get the idea.
Yep. So, anyways, Chinggis takes a look over at the third brother in the room, Ogade, who is happily drinking and trying not to cause any fights at the moment. And everybody is like, and Chinggis is like, okay, Ogade, you're in charge of this? Maybe you want to lay out the booze for half a second? And Ogade is like, yep, sure, daddy. So, and he continues on with the army and conquers more stuff.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. I can't imagine. I'm sorry. I don't. Careful, Yandos, with that word. You don't want anybody to be listening to your podcast and come in and say, what you listening to? And they're saying, oh, I'm just listening to somebody talk about Daddy Genghis. And but no, that is interesting. That's how it worked out.
Yep.
And you can't blame the guy for drinking all that much. There wasn't much to do back then.
Well, but the big problem here is that the big problem here is that for all the heirs to Genghis Khan, it's kind of a habit. Like, all the boys get drunk. All the boys get like 50 different wives that I can't remember. All these guys, all they do is women and booze, and it is like, just run your dang empire.
Well, hey, that's what 90% of all rock stars do, so... Look, they're just following the code set by Thin Lizzy. The boys are back in town, okay? And they're here to have a good time.
Indeed they are.
Can you imagine if that's what they would do? That's the music they would use when they showed up anywhere to do what they did. You'd be minding your own business, doing some farming, towing the land, getting the rocks out of the way, and then all you hear is, guess who just got back today? Them wild-eyed boys that have been away. And then all of a sudden, it's the Mongols, and you're doomed.
Which is probably true, considering usually the thing is, like, so, like, usually when the Mongols conquer an area, they don't actually do that much slaughtering initially. Like, usually they might slaughter the first town. But then the second town's...
And you're in the first town, let's just say that.
You slaughter the first town, and then the second town's like, okay, we'll surrender and pay tribute. And then Genghis is like, great, we're in business. Business is booming. And then he walks away from that campaign, hoping that they continue to pay tribute. Continue is the key word, obviously. And 5 seconds later, tribute payments paused.
You gotta pay the guys.
The tribute payments paused. They killed your diplomat. And then you gotta go all the way back there, pissed off your butt.
Yeah, no, in a way, it reminds me of something I know a little bit more about, but not too much more about. It reminds me a little bit of something that, some Italians might know about, if you catch my drift.
Okay, go on.
Well, the whole protection payments. It's the
It's all those.
The difference is, I'm pretty sure the Mongols were still scarier. I'm pretty sure Genghis was a little scarier than what was his name? I have a friend she's in her 50s, so she's a friend from Toastmasters. Her name's Vicky. She's Italian, and I'm trying to remember who it is she's related to. He's a very famous mobster, and I can't remember what his name is. Everybody knows this guy, but what? I don't remember. Where is this guy's name? Hold on. But whatever the case is, he was last seen before he went to prison fishing in his own swimming pool because he got a very specific kind of disease, and it rotted his brain. What was his name? I don't know. But either way... My friend Vicky would know a lot about would probably hear this and probably bring it up.
Yep.
But anyways, you continue.
So anyway, so this this little dispute between Jochi and Chagatai is basically a preview to the major succession crisis that sort of happens later on during Genghis's reign, because he's trying to figure out which kid will succeed him, and basically he's like, I would love to have my oldest kid Jochi in charge, but that fight with Chagatai, that got really messy, especially when Chagatai pulled out the you are only my half brother card.
Ouch.
Yeah, because basically, so like the story is like Jochi was actually born when was born like shortly after Genghis rescued his mother from captivity. So we don't know who the dad is.
Love story. You don't hear the softer side of Genghis Khan all the time, you know?
Well, they already knew each other long before that. They were promised to marry like when he was like 13, because Mongol marriage is weird.
No, that's how marriage worked for most of history. Marriage wasn't always
yeah, that is true.
romantic related. It was, for the longest time, you asked the Vikings, the Mesopotamians, probably not the cavemen, because they didn't have marriage. They were kind of a free love hippie society that also was kind of brutal. But anyways, marriage was always meant to create power chains.
Right.
The best way to unite two clans, two families, two lineages is to make children. And the best way to make sure the only way to making children with each other was to make sure they were married. Then they have complete claim to each other. Nobody else can say, yes, but what about we? And they would just say, sorry, I'm married.
Indeed.
So it makes perfect sense that they had an arranged marriage early on. Heck, some countries still do that today, although I feel like there's sort of a whole thing where it's like, yes, it might not be good to an American eye. Different strokes, different folks.
Yeah, the marriage custom, like arranging like the marriage when you're still kids, it's still kind of around in Mongolia more or less, but but obviously they're still like, we'll wait until you're past puberty.
Yeah, of course.
But anyways, we got to get back to the actual history bit. So Chagatai, in compensation for not getting the throne of being the great Khan, he gets a little bit more territory, specifically the stuff known as Mawarnar and Al-Malik, and this is basically just he gets to own mostly the Mongol Empire that happens to be just above the Indian subcontinent / Afghanistan of sorts, like just right around that area-ish.
Oh my.
And but technically speaking, this isn't an official, like he's independent of anyone. He's technically you're supposed to manage this while still serving your younger brother Ogode, who is now going to be the new Great Han, because I can't put Jochi in charge because you two are going to fight again.
Yeah, they did not have get-along shirts back then.
Oh no, they did not. Especially as the Mongols. It's like I leave Empire to kids. Oh gosh darn it, I left Empire to the kids. Multiple kids. And now the Empire's ruined.
Empire. Leave Empire to kids. Kids get into argument. Kids get into argument? Except in this case, maybe a little more than that.
Indeed. So, obviously, Chagatai had many different wives, and probably many different women he just straight up kidnapped and just slept with anyway. Let's
use that terminology. I'm kidding. We all know what you mean, and that looks, different time period.
Yep.
Also, it's we done knew this was going to be part of this.
Yep, and so but primarily he is married to two women, Yisulun and Togen, and he has, and the main 6 sons that are entitled to the succession are Mogituken, Mochiyaba, and Balagashi, Sarban, Yasumunke, and Baidar. Mogituken is the official favorite for a good long while because he's the oldest, but unfortunately he ran into a problem. He died.
Yeah, that's kind of usually a problem for most people.
So he was like leading an assault on the city of Bamiyan over modern-day Afghanistan, and well, unfortunately, he ran into the usual problem that most great warriors run into in Afghanistan. Somebody managed to kill him and make the invasion of sorts somewhat unsuccessful.
Yeah, you can't win them all. And sometimes when you lose, it's over forever.
Yep. But Genghis Khan has heard the terrible news about his poor grandson, so he talks to his grandson's wife, and he gives her a very special gift. Hey, we just captured the city that killed your husband. What are you going to do? And the Mongol queen grabs the nearest sword and bow, and she's like, "Kill everyone!"
Yeah, no, I mean, I can understand why she'd be a little mad.
Yep.
A little bit. Yeah, ain't that the $1 million question? What are we gonna do with this place? Well, I have a few ideas, and they all involve mass violence.
Oh yeah. Right here we go. And in the meantime, Chagatai is officially appointed by his father Genghis as the basic law and order guy in the room. So yes, in case you're wondering, ACAB does include Chagatai, and I'm not sorry that I said that.
Yeah.
Because he is enforcing the law, he is making the law, and he definitely has a lot of disagreements with how other people interpret the law. Most importantly...
I see. Kind of a bit draconian he is.
Oh, yeah, definitely on that one. The biggest law that you can definitely, biggest brutal law that you can definitely see on the Mongols' record usually is how creative they get with the executions of enemy nobility, because the big idea with the enemy nobility is that you're not supposed to spill their blood onto the ground.
So I'm guessing they decided to make Jackson Pollock paintings with that.
Sort of, in a way, if you mean very creative ways of snapping the back.
Not just splatters is what I was getting at. That's how he painted.
Right, I remember. So they...
Ouch.
Yeah, so things hurt a lot, obviously. And there are actually several instances of him disagreeing with scholars of Islamic law, and I can imagine for those poor Islamic scholars, things did not end well.
Yeah, no, not a good way to end up, I don't think.
Indeed. So, anyways, unfortunate, but in the meantime, Chagatai is looking around and he's watching how the rest of the empire is functioning, and mostly he's seeing his generation get smaller and smaller, if you will, because you see. So you see, Genghis technically divided his empire of sorts amongst his various sons and daughters by his first couple of wives. And the thing was, it took for all about 5 seconds for those kids to start expanding the empire and also expanding their domains onto each other's domains and start killing each other. Especially the brothers. So it's what happened. So what happened there was the oldest brother Jochi, he actually died before Genghis, of enough stuff to fill a conspiracy theorist blog. We don't know exactly what happened there. And then we have Chagatai, he's somehow still alive. Tolui, the youngest brother in the bunch, he actually walks out around and dies basically of a hangover. Either that or he was poisoned. Take with that what you will. And
ouch, as they do say.
Yep, and Ogaday, the third brother, he's still technically in charge, but he isn't paying all that much attention, considering that he's got a slot between the women, and then the booze, and then the women again, and then the booze again, and then he keeps on going back to the booze. Yeah.
Yeah, just did, like I said, party like a rock star.
I think he took that. I think he took that a bit too far. Keep in mind he's going to die of alcoholism just right around 1240. So, yeah. And so Ogaday is down. So basically, that means that Chagatai is the lone surviving son of Genghis Khan that was born to his first wife. So that basically, so in a way, he is sort of the decision maker on who gets to be Han next. And he basically decides to throw his weight down behind Ogaday's behind Ogaday's favorite son, Guyu Khan. Problem is, Guyu Khan is a bit on the younger side at the moment, so he talks to Ogaday's wife, Toragane, and Toragane is like, "I would like to be regent," and Ogaday is and Chagatai is like, "Yep, you can be regent. I don't mind. Also, I'm not getting any younger around here, so I'm gonna set up my succession with my grandson Kare Hulegu, and then 1242 he basically just drops dead of old age. Surprisingly, didn't touch a single mug of booze. Kind of an exception rather than the rule here."
You know, by the way, I know this is a bit of a segue, and we're going to get right back to the history in a moment, but I do realize something that you might be interested in, my good friend, since we met, this topic fascinated you.
Go on.
I told you that my knowledge of this empire is very slight. And it's so slight that I didn't realize something while I was... Anyways, long story short, if you like MMOs, you might like Guild Wars 2, because there's a group in Guild Wars 2 that are based off these guys, sort of. They're also a little bit Roman, but they're mostly, just in the naming, everything else is these guys. Well, the weird part, they are giant horned cat monsters called the Char, but they are very, very Mongolian, to the point where their big leader is the Khan-er.
I see what they did there.
And I didn't realize that, because once again, most of their naming conventions are so Roman, kind of to make sure people didn't think, oh, these are just weird giant cat monsters that are Mongolians, just in giant cat monster bodies. But their political structure, very, very much Mongolian. So if you want to give them a check out, the game is free. I'm not trying to... they're not paying me, of course. I don't think they're particularly interested, ArenaNet, in a podcast about Mongolia, but this is for you, Janos, not just for anybody. Just thought that was something to bring up.
Yep. Anyway, so the story goes, so Kare Hulegu is in charge for a good little bit, but he's actually thrown out and replaced with, I believe, briefly replaced around 1246 by another one of his brothers, mainly because by one of his uncles. No, it was one of his uncles. Yeah. And basically, the big problem there is that Guyuk guy, he kind of actually turned out to be a really crappy excuse for a Khan, almost like it runs in a family or something.
Oh my.
And he decided to fire Chagatai's heir and appoint somebody else, and then he killed his mom's best friend. And went back to drinking booze until he died mysteriously.
Mysteriously?
Don't worry, there's probably enough mysterious deaths in the Mongol royal family to fill a conspiracy theorist blog.
Yeah, no.
Especially when you get to the first brother, Jochi, that's like Chagatai's old brother. Oh my goodness, there are so many conspiracy theories where that guy's going. But anyways, back to the normal timeline. So after Guyuk dies in 1247, when he finally either has gone to mysterious circumstances or just plain old drinking, the big thing that happens next on timeline as the Chagatai Hane destabilizing is known as the Toluid Revolution. So, like, Tolui's kids basically got into a four-man cabal of sorts, or quartet of conspiracy to take over the Mongol Empire completely. And basically, using some of their mother's skill at politics, they managed to actually sweep the rug out from under Ogaday and his kids. So
you didn't have anybody wearing face paint and a crazy yak helmet, right?
No, definitely not.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to get political, but how could you forget? But anyways, back to
that guy.
100 years. Let's go back a few thousand years.
Yes, let's forget about storming a capital and wearing buffalo horns and then going on an organic diet for some reason.
Yeah, no, but this we're talking about people with a little more class than that, right?
Oh, definitely a lot more class than that. So yeah, but the big problem with the Toluid Revolution is we first get Monka Han in charge. He's like the oldest son from Tolui, and then when he dies in around 1260, he passes on his succession over to Kublai, although he doesn't fully agree to that, and basically it all devolves into a bit of a fight in the middle of China between his two younger brothers, Arik Bokeh and the Kublai, who's going to be the next Han. And then Kublai manages to get out on top, and he declares himself in charge, and basically is trying to make sure that all of his distant relations that are in charge of different parts of the Mongol Empire are going to obey him specifically. And there is one more heir to Ogaday Han who is basically saying, "Nope, not doing that." And his name is Kaidu Han. And he happens to be positioned right between the Chagatai territory and modern day Tibet and China, which is basically where Kublai is more officially in charge as Han of the new Yuan dynasty of sorts. And Kaidu, he is descended from Ogaday's fifth son, Korshi, and he is basically like the last major heir to Ogaday that's actually got a shot at doing anything. And he's certainly got some of the right cards in the room. He's got an alliance with the Chagatai Hanate. He's got reasonably good relations with Jochi's distant descendants over in Russia, and then he's got more than enough heirs than he knows what to do with. Specifically, 15 sons from his first wife, and
you know what they say on us.
Yeah.
To heirs is human.
Yep. And then two daughters, Kutlun and Kutuchin. Some of my listeners will be more familiar with Kutlun because she is officially known as the most badass wrestler in all of Mongol history, and no, there is no other argument. Kutlun is just badass.
Maybe I should tell my cousin about that. He'll be having a baby in a few months. Well, not him, his wife.
Right, yeah.
He's not having any. He likes to say that, but it's like, you're not, Tanner. Your wife is. You do what
last I checked, we haven't been able to pull the pregnant man.
Back to the history.
Yep. Yeah, so so in the meantime, Kaido is often described in the records as having average height and build. He's aged surprisingly well, probably because he's laying off the booze, much unlike his grandfather in the room. Looking at you, Ogade. You really should have laid off the booze.
Grandpa, you gotta put down the... What would they be drinking, Janos, by the way?
Kumis. It is an...
Kumis. Oh, that stuff is gross sounding, but what they had.
Yeah, so basically, like, they milk the horse, and then they ferment it.
Yep, that is 2 levels of gross. I mean, I guess we drink the milk from cows fresh, and we ferment that, too. That's how you make cheese. I mean, that's basically it. The difference is, I guess, I don't know. Just I remember, the first time I heard about kumis was from Pathfinder, which is like Dungeons and Dragons, but also, yes. And they mentioned it, and I was like, that can't be real. They made that up for this game. Then I found out. So kumis, huh?
Yep.
Well, you know what they say. There's nothing that gets you back on the horse than getting back on the horse.
Oh dear. Anyway, so but the big thing that gets really awesome about this short little time period is that Kaido is allowing Kutlun to pick her husband, which is very rare. And mainly because Kutlun initially is like, I don't want to get married, and Kaido is like, all right, we'll not push it, but as you know, because you are a famously great warrior and also a beautiful daughter of mine, there will be men coming after you like dogs. So naturally, she's like, I've got an idea for that, Dad. What's that? I will challenge all my suitors to wrestling matches. And if they win, I marry them. And if they lose, I get all their horses. And Mongols, obviously being mounted archers, they have a bunch of horses. So you can imagine how quickly Kutlun's herd of sorts starts growing.
I can imagine. Now, if any girl's going to want a pony for her birthday, it's going to be one of these people, one of these girls.
More like 50 ponies.
Many ponies is what we're getting at.
Indeed. So she kept on doing that over and over again, and keep in mind, she never lost a wrestling match ever. So she gets a lot of horses, and eventually, if you're wondering how she eventually does sort of settle down, she basically meets this one guy on the battlefield and captures him. And basically it sounds like a Stockholm Syndrome love story of sorts.
I'm sorry, I'm still imagining the wrestling thing again. And it's like, now, wouldn't that make for a fun rom-com?
Jeez. Alright, so anyways, back to the story. So, unfortunately, her younger sister, Kuruchin, isn't half as lucky. So, because she's doing her usual stuff, maybe managing the kids, running the tent, and conversing with the servants, when she decides to take a peek into the bedroom. And she finds her husband cheating with a slave, and she was pregnant at the time. And for whatever reason, her husband got really pissed off that he walked in on her, and apparently he bit her to death on the spot. And obviously, this pisses off most of Kaido Han's kids. So they.
Oh man, that is not the. I'm guessing this doesn't end well for that fellow.
This somehow actually ends a lot better than you expect, actually. So the story goes, so the brothers go out and capture Kuruchin's husband, and they basically drag him right in front of Kaido, and they're like, we are going to butcher this asshole right on the spot. And Kaido's like, okay, guys, actually slow down. I am actually going to be a little lighter. Hand me the whip. So he.
Yeah. Oh man.
So he.
I'm guessing this is gonna end up like a Devo song.
Does a Devo song involve 100 hits with a whip?
Only if you put it on loop for a while. So you gotta whip it good.
Oh my. Yep. And so anyway, so the Kudachin's murdering husband gets whipped 100 times and is allowed to remarry. One of Kaidu's other daughters from another one of his wives, because Mongols have way too many dang kids for me to keep track of. And apparently he's still alive for the moment. And usually, like, the big talk when it comes to historical record on Haidu is that he's used to contrast with Kublai as a defender of traditional Mongol values. Yeah, I know, this sounds about as Republican as it can get.
Hey man, traditional values, gotta respect the something. You gotta respect the passion for the will to keep traditions alive, and traditional values are part of that.
So yep. And so he's got to do the traditional Mongol values. He doesn't want the Mongols to start settling down, with the Chinese women, starting to look a little Chinese, because Kublai was basically raised by Chinese people. Like, he was mentored by a Chinese tutor. He was taught all the good Confucian virtues, and he was like, and Kaidu is framed as, I'm going to be the exact opposite of that, which isn't entirely true, because keep in mind, Kaidu did use some Chinese bureaucracy, so obviously there's that, and then there's and then there's the fact that he stood by throughout his grandfather Ogaday's reign. And didn't mind too much when he saw the Mongols adopting Chinese customs then. So don't listen to some of the traditional old historians from centuries ago that keep on telling you who Kaidu is completely.
Hey man, history gets a little muddled over time, but you always want to get to the most, what's the word I'm looking for, accurate version of it. And knowing you, Janos, we're about to get a very accurate version of what's going on.
Yeah, so further devotion to accuracy on debunking this myth. So we're going to briefly cover the Arikboke versus Kublai fight again. And Arikboke is also contrasted with Kublai briefly as the traditional guardian of Mongol values, but while Arikboke is framed as that, apparently Kaidu does not jump onto the train of supporting Arikboke. I'm not entirely surprised about this, considering that Arikboke is still part of the Toluids that managed to perform a successful revolution and throw out Kaidu's family. But anyways, Kublai manages to resolve the feud between himself and Arikboke, mostly by chucking his little brother in prison and having him die under somewhat mysterious circumstances. Let's just put it that way.
Oh my!
So now we have so now there we have Kublai. He's trying to get in graciously with Kaidu. He's like, hey, if you pay tribute and acknowledge me as the Great Han, I will and listen to me. I will completely leave you to run whatever territory you want. And Kaidu's like, hold on, that involves me paying tribute and saying yes to you, one of the 4 guys who kicked my family out of China. Yeah, that kind of does involve that. I'm not going to listen to you, right? Yeah, that's why I brought this army up here. So Kaido manages to call up all the other Hans. He's like, we all know what it would like to be a little bit more independent of the Great Han, right? We'd like to collaborate and be sort of a team of sorts of Hans who want to be independent of Hublai and not listen to him.
Yeah, no, I can see why he would think like that.
Yep. So he's so Kaido starts. So Kaido seizes some actual territory. We don't know exactly where his territory was, but generally we're looking at right around where the Chagatai Khanate is, just right on that territory, and we're looking at between like the Talus and Jaxartes rivers, some very big and important rivers right there, and in the meantime, he is talking with the Chagataids and getting them on his stuff, and initially we have initially there are some problems with Algu Han, who is the reigning Han at the time. He is like a descendant of Chagatai through like his son Baidar, and then Baidar, but Algu Han dies. Whatever sort of arguments the two have, and then Kaido briefly fights Barack, not to be spelled like Barack Obama, and then he gets, but they finally get to the negotiation table, and they manage to figure out some sort of a alliance agreement and fight Baka, who is the Han of the Ilkhanate. And that's specifically descended from another one of the Tolwid kids, specifically Hulegu, the great sacker of Baghdad, and the guy who decided that the last caliph of Baghdad should be either locked in his treasury to starve or trampled on in a carpet with a bunch of horses.
Yikes.
Yeah, the Mongols have enough brutal executions to make a metal album look PG.
Yeah, no. There's only one group I think that I can think. I'm sorry, there's only one group that I can think of that had equally brutal means of doing bad things to people.
Oh.
But unfortunately, yeah, I think if I'm remembering correctly, it was the. It feels terrible. I always get them mixed up. I believe it was the Aztecs were pretty darn, or was the Mayans? I feel terrible. I always get them mixed up.
They both did human sacrifice, but I think the Aztecs were more on the human sacrifices. Like, we gotta keep on doing X amount of human sacrifices or the sun won't come up.
All right, I believe it was. Oh, okay, yeah. One of them, though. But actually, yeah, they were both pretty brutal. I believe I'm thinking actually though of the Aztecs.
Yeah.
Who would do some rather brutal means of. You did not want to get on their bad side, even if they weren't doing a sacrifice that day.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that the Mayans weren't nice either. weren't brutal either.
Neither of them were nice, but they were efficient, much like the Mongols.
Yep. Efficiently going to war with each other brutally, slaughtering each other, and also, congratulations, you lost this game of weird ball that we still haven't figured out yet. We're going to execute the entire team.
Yikes.
Yep. So anyway, but basically, like, basically the lines between Chagatai's kids and Haidu is official, well, for the most part, but there is actually a rebellion against Kaido by Ahmad, and Barak who is a bit more solid with Kaido on the Bro realm, manages to defeat Ahmad, but unfortunately he's a bit on the older side, so he dies shortly after this. But apparently that doesn't stop some of the Chagatai kids from going against Kaido, specifically Negube, who also rebels and is also crushed. and also on the other side, Kaido is officially acknowledged as an independent Han by Jochi's descendants over in Russia. So naturally,
So you said an independent Han?
yeah, he's.
So you're saying this Han was solo?
In a way, if you could call it.
I'm sorry. That was terrible as well. But
anyways, back to the story. So back to the story. So Kaidu has to deal with border incursion from around one Kublai's generals on Nanmuhan / and the Nanmuhan is also one of Kublai's kids. And the guy gets about as far as Khotan and Hershey, but the big thing there in the Central Asian steppes is that Kaidu basically avoids Kublai's army at all costs. He does not want to engage them at all. He's like, I'm going to keep on running away, and I'll shoot arrows when I can, and keep on disrupting your supply lines.
Yeah, that may have been for the best.
Yeah, it probably was.
Sometimes people, you got to pick your battles.
Yeah,
I once heard the expression, some say cowardice is a sign of weakness. Some say it's a form of love for life.
Yep. So, anyways, so Kublai has after seemingly conquering a bit of area where Kaido is supposed to be, he's like, "Hey, Kaido, submit to me." Kaido is like, "No," and in the meanwhile, Namuhan, Kublai's general / son, gets some major problems, specifically rebellion from this other guy, Shiragi. And that keeps Namuhan briefly occupied. Kaido decides to not get involved. But apparently another guy, Anton, tries to get in on this feud. And but this brief fight is rather brief because Namuhan crushes everything, and he's like, "Okay, Kaido, submit to me." And Kaido is like, "Nope," again. And Kaido decides to completely make sure that he looks in opposition to Kublai. So he talks to the kids of Kublai's dead younger brother Aikboke, and he's like, "Hey, you wanna come over here and have some sort of shelter and an army?" And they're like, "Yep." All right, so they so the sons come over, their kids tag along, and then the Yuan dynasty, Kublai's place, tries to perform some sanctions upon Kaido. Unfortunately, this does not work.
I mean, how often does it?
It doesn't work all that well. I mean, like, for the record, Cuba still has sanctions after so many years, and they somehow still get free healthcare.
Oh my!
Oh yeah. 2020 has been the year for Cuba to say, "Hey, we're doing all this crazy stuff that America can't do anything about."
No, they may have had their hands tied less. Either way, isn't it weird to say, "Man, life was good during the empire, the Mongolian Empire, Empire."
Yep. So so the sanctions don't work. There's very little control in the steppes. So Kublai withdraws his army from Khotan, and they have very loose control over Tibet. So naturally, that means free party time for Kaido and his trading / marauding buddies. And there's also a revolt over in Manchuria by Nyan, I believe, and Kublai has to go deal with that. Kaido then tries to attack Mongolia. It's a bit indecisive. He does some pillaging and plundering, but it doesn't actually take too much. But one of the big framings that is going around is that Kaido doesn't actually see himself as the great as the great Han of the Mongols. He doesn't want to lay claim to that. He's mostly fine with Kublai doing and going on and being great Han, so long as he gets his own special piece. But in the meantime, Kaido is not getting any younger. And the Yuan actually gets some help from one of the divisions of Jochi's kids, specifically the White Horde, and they start pushing back Kaido. And Dua Han, who is the Khan of the Chagataids, he actually decides to lead a counterattack of sorts. There's a lot of back and forth between Kublai and his kids and Kaido and his kids. But Kaido doesn't get to see too much of that because he dies in 1301 and he doesn't have too many good plans for succession. Sounds like a lot of Mongols, but okay.
I mean, you never think about it till you need it.
That is true. And but he does have 15 kids, so he's gonna try to figure out which one. And he names his, I believe, youngest son Horus as his successor. And he's like, all right, Horus, you're gonna be in charge. Just listen to my buddy Dua, Han of the Chagataids, and hopefully we'll all be good. Unfortunately, Dua apparently had other plans than listening to Kaido or Kaido's kids, or just keeping them around too much. So Kaido decides to cause some division, at least according to the Persian historian Wasaf, and he claims that, and Wasaf claims that Dua wanted one of Kaido's other sons by the name of Chapar, and there's a lot more division. And Kutlun pops up back in the history books because she actually opposes Chapar's ascension in favor of Horus, and then Guyuk's son Tugme is also in on this, is also in on opposing. But Dua is like, hold on, slow down a little bit. I still want Chapar in charge, but we're going to get to the negotiation table to try to not make this too messy. And in the meantime, they make some peace with Kublai Han, or rather Kublai's kids, miraculously, because Kublai is dead. And then immediately after that peace deal with the Yuan dynasty, the Chagataids and Kaido's kids go back immediately to fighting each other. Yep.
These days.
Yep. And so, while like Dua was a good friend of Kaido, there were many disagreements. Dua wanted to kind of shake off Kaido's authority of sorts. But in the meantime, he's calling for his weird peace and unity coalition. He's like, "Hey, I'm going to try to make nice briefly with the Yuan dynasty. Hey, Jochids, lay off on me for a half a second. Also, Hulegu's kids, also lay off on me because I'm trying to deal with Kaido's kids." So there is more fighting between Dua and Chapar. It's kind of funky that Chapar is now fighting Dua because Dua was trying to get him appointed. So this is all just a lot of civil war. And Chapar tries to take out Dua's son Kutlug, and his brother Sarban is leading the charge. And there's an initial victory on Kaido's on the Kaido faction end, but then unfortunately there is a defeat. And then they surrender in about 1306, although that doesn't stop a couple of their buddies from plundering Samarkand and Bukhara over in Hulagu's territory. So naturally there's some fights with the Ilkhanate, which is Hulagu's kids. And then Horus, he Horus, since he has been demoted, he is actually trying to guard the border with the Yuan dynasty. And he has a little bit of an ace up his sleeve in manner of speaking, like in the sense like he's friends with the local Yuan commander Kaishan. They've made nice, more or less. They're good friends, and they plan on having a dinner next Friday. Unfortunately, Dua decides to turn up the problems to 11, and he basically convinces Dua that Horus is very suspicious and trying to have him kidnapped. Turns out Horus was in fact not the imposter.
Oh my.
And Kaishan attacks Horus, and there's a lot of Horus is captured. There's a lot of disunity in the Central Asian steppes. So there's lots of plundering and lots of plundering of Kaidu's herds, Kaidu's former lands and herds by Dua and his buddies. And Chapar finally is like, "All right, I'll submit to whatever you want. Just don't kill me." And Dua is like, "All right, I'll not kill you, and I will instead give you this itty bit little spot in the middle of nowhere, and a little bit of a retirement fund. I suppose it's better than most times when the family gets nasty." But still, ouch.
Yikes.
And then, but this is just in time for Dua to actually die of old age. Apparently, another Genghis heir who decided to remain relatively stable and lay off the booze. But Dua dies, and unfortunately his Dua's son Konchak also dies barely like a year later, so naturally there is more succession problems. And so Chagatai's grandson, Chagatai's great grandson Taliku takes over. And he tries to be in charge, but another one of Dua's kids, Quebec, I believe, he actually links up with Kaishan, and he manages to beat Taliku, and Kaishan briefly takes over as regent, and then he allows for Quebec to take over. But in the meantime, the Ogadaids are specifically Chapar is like, all right, since the Chagataids are not doing too much, we're going to officially try to gain our independence back. And they manage to slaughter all the guards stationed around them, and they start like saying, "Hey, we're free again," and we're not going to listen to too many people, and then Kaishan manages to get them to sue for peace and hand power over to Quebec, and then we're going to. So now we start up again, and since I've been mostly talking about Kaidu through this through this little book by Michael Bieran that was recommended to me by my buddy Jack Wilson, otherwise known as the JackMeister. I'll put the link to the book in the description, and basically the story, the next part that Michael Bieran is talking about is Kaidu's army. And Kaidu's army mostly made up of mounted archers, but they're, of course, from a lot of different tribes. And this is obviously very diverse and full of a bunch of guys who could shoot arrows off of horseback. There's also some occasional desertion to Hule Goose kids and the Chagatai Hanate, but that's not too much of a problem for Kaidu. But because he decides to be a good, smart commander and organize like organized like Chinggis or Genghis Khan, whatever, and he. And in the records, his army is actually called Lashkar Kasa, which is Mongol for private army, and basically that's meant to show that they are establishing their independence from basically all the other great Khans in the room, but there's still a bit of a problem in the sense of Kaido doesn't have too much in the way of siege warfare, but he does have one major unique weapon in his arsenal outside of crazy guys on horses with bows, specifically flamethrowers.
Wow.
So basically, like the story goes, the flamethrowers, it's either you have one of two routes. Either you manage to copy the Greek fire recipe that has been lost for centuries, or you go to what is known as a fire lance. Basically, you have some very slow burning gunpowder right at the end of a very long stick. And you light up the gunpowder. It looks a little funky. It gets very hot, and then you get them relatively close to whatever you're trying to burn, and then you just light up whoever is in your way.
Yes, and you get this all from Ragnaros the Fire Lord in the Firelands. I'm sorry, as you probably can guess, I play a lot of MMOs. I'm sorry.
It's all right. So the big problem that Kaido has is numbers. So we're not sure exactly what how many troops Kaido has. So he has probably maybe 100,000, 200,000 guys, but obviously that is completely dwarfed by whatever the Yuan dynasty has. So naturally, he has to keep to doing all the evasive warfare that the steppe warriors specialize in, and also it's true that Kublai and his buddies had a lot more firepower. This is not necessarily because of a complete. This is not because Kaido didn't know what to do with siege. He certainly knew how to fortify cities and all that. It just happened that Kublai and Hulegu and his kids. They all had the more siege engineers from China and the former Persian Empire. So naturally, when your enemies have a monopoly on siege engineers, you tend to avoid sieges. And generally, apparently, the campaign season was in autumn, which is kind of funky because most ancient armies decided that spring and summertime was a better scenario. Obviously, do not campaign summertime in the summer. Are you crazy? Well, in the desert, I mean.
Yeah, no, where I'm from, that sounds like a bad idea. That sounds like why German tourists usually end up in trouble in the summers here. It's always summertime in Arizona when some guy from Norway who decided to visit our beautiful hiking trails needs to be airlifted out because he didn't bring a water bottle or any form of liquid.
Sounds like a Viking pillage mission got terribly wrong.
Happens every year. Sometimes they don't make it in time, but for the most part, the goal is to get the guys out and remind them, like all the signs say, all throughout the trails, and before the trails, and the billboards leading up to the trails. They usually campaign in the fall. They're of course better at, and apparently when it comes to whatever sieges that Kaido does, they're better at attacking fortresses built out of mud bricks rather than stone. Apparently this is a bit of a strange trend of sorts when it comes to Mongol siege warfare. Like, the Mongols were still professionals when it came to siege warfare, mostly by getting everybody else to do all the hard work for them. But they usually prefer to attack mud fortresses rather than stone fortresses, because apparently the stone fortresses are a bit more resistant to Mongol siege weapons. Although sometimes they manage to find the right exceptions to use the bigger siege weapons.
And of course, they resort to their usual indirect warfare. They have their usual arsenal of medieval weapons, ranging from swords to maces. I don't know if there's a flail in the room, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Mongols used it. They've got spears, bows, whatever you can get your hands on to fight the Yuan dynasty. And there's a little bit of diversity in religions because the Mongols were tolerant in the sense of so long as you acknowledge me as your overlord and pay your taxes, I won't touch your religion. So help me God. I'll just let you do as you will. But you must pay your taxes, or I will kill you and everything you love. So, and he has, and Kaidu has some trusted advisors like Masood Beg, who is Muslim, and actually, I forgot to mention this earlier. Kaidu actually prefers Islam. I believe he was a convert actually, and that's a bit of a funky thing because Chagatai had a lot of problems with all the various scholars of Islamic law, and used to either debate them or get them killed. Do as you do. But another one of the big divisions on how Kaidu runs his little domain is that most of the empire is run by princes that are descended from him or his brothers and cousins of sorts, and he has. And mostly this is a very prospering Ulus/Khanate, and there's a lot of trade going on. So naturally, Kaidu feels a bit rich, but he doesn't spend too much. And there's very light taxes. There is some currency reform, mainly to transfer everything over to silver coinage. There is some agriculture. Don't know how you farm this far into the steppes, but okay, Kaidu. There is also a lot of trade going around. But mostly the empire is quite stable, at least up until Kaidu dies, but he manages to basically get he's basically credited by Michael Biren as the guy who basically gets all the Khanates to basically declare virtual independence from the Great Han. Because they're like, okay, well, acknowledge as the Great Han, but you can't stop us from not paying taxes because you don't have the time and money to send all your army over here. And the Yuan dynasty keeps on becoming more and more aware of that because they have to deal with local rebellions, the fact that their kids are all fighting each other, all sorts of major problems. In fact, as I've covered in a previous episode, the Yuan dynasty actually gets overthrown in the late 1300s by, you'll never guess, a peasant orphan who came from a Buddhist monastery. Last guy you'd expect to overthrow a Mongol empire, but okay.
And when the world needed him most, he vanished. Sorry, that's a bad one too.
Yep.
I'm just awful today.
It's alright. But anyways, with all that, Kaidu, and we conclude our section on Kaidu, and we're going to cover more of the Chagataids later when I brew up a bit more research, thanks to some more sources provided by my friend the JackMeister. But anyways, in the meantime, all sources will be in the description. Subscribe and subscribe. I'm also officially on TikTok, and there is some more links to follow me on social media in the description. And we'll love you all, guys. And we're all going to say bye now. And as Blue Evan blows it, may you stay well and refreshed during this pandemic.
Agreed.
If you like this segment of the Mongols podcast, be sure to follow me on Twitter at YoungBards101, like our Facebook page at History with Samwise J. Morgenstern, and follow us on Tumblr at GoSJM42 on GoSJM42 Mongol History. You can also support us on Anchor or Patreon. As always, our sources are in the description, and we also have rewards for our patrons ranging from shoutouts to polls. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. And as always, Blue Heaven wills everything.